So this prophet asked Allah, he says, Ya Allah, show me how you bring life to something that has been unalived. And Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala actually showed him a sample of how he brings back life to something that has been lifeless. This prophet is Ibrahim alayhi salam, also known as Abraham. And it all started with an encounter he had with Namrud. Who is Namrud? Namrud was a king, a very wicked king that doesn't believe in Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. As a matter of fact, he claims to be God. Actually, the story of Namrud is a whole different story on its own, and inshallah in the coming days I will be making a video on that. But for the meantime, on one occasion, Namrud asked Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, you keep preaching to us and telling us about your Lord. Tell us why we should believe in your Lord. Then Ibrahim alayhi salam says, my Lord is the one that gives life and takes life. Then Namrud was like, no, I am the one that gives life and takes life. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam told Namrud that it is his Lord that gives life and takes life, Ibrahim alayhi salam from his own part wanted to know how Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala brings back something that has been lifeless back into existence. So he asked Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, he says, Ya Allah, can you show me how you give life to something that has been lifeless? Then Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala asked Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, Ya Ibrahim, don't you believe? Then Ibrahim alayhi salam says, of course, Ya Allah, I do believe, but I just want my heart to be reassured. So Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala then told Ibrahim alayhi salam to get 4 different types of birds. And Ibrahim alayhi salam did as instructed by Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. He got 4 different types of birds. He got a dove, a rooster, a peacock, and a crow. A different narration says the 4th one wasn't a crow, but rather a heron. So after he got the birds, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told him to slaughter them and then cut them into different parts, which he did. And after that, he mixed all the parts of the 4 birds together in one place, whereafter he divided the mixed part into 4 and then placed each part on top of a separate mountain. So now we have 4 mountains, and on top of each mountain there are several parts of each of the birds. Let me make this even more clearer. Not that each of the bird is having its own mountain, no, but rather on top of each mountain there are several parts of each of the birds. So for example, on top of mountain 1 there are some parts of the dove, some parts of the rooster, some parts of the peacock, and some parts of the crow. And likewise the same thing for mountain 2, mountain 3, and mountain 4. Each of the mountain is having several parts of these birds. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam held the heads of these birds in his hands. So the parts of the birds are on the mountains, and then the heads are in his hands. Then Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told Ibrahim alayhi salam to call upon the birds, which he did. And the moment he called on a particular bird, the parts of that bird that have been scattered on top of 4 different mountains will come together and recollect. So right before Ibrahim alayhi salam's eyes, the part of each bird came together and fixed itself with the might and power of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, as if they weren't dismantled in the first place. So each of the birds came running to Ibrahim alayhi salam asking to be given its head. Remember, I told you all the heads were in his hands. So each of the birds will come to him seeking to be given its head. So if Ibrahim alayhi salam gave a bird a wrong head, a head that doesn't belong to it, it will reject and only insist on accepting its own head. Who does this if not Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala? Allahu Akbar. And then after each bird got its head fixed to its body, Ibrahim alayhi salam becomes reassured on how Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala brings back into existence something that has lost its life. And then to round up the story, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. This is so you know that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala is indeed the Almighty and the All-Wise. And the end. So what are the lessons we can derive from this story? Actually, the lessons in this story are kind of similar to that of the traveler story, which I already explained in the story of the traveler. If you haven't watched the video yet, make sure you do so. However, here is a quick recap. Firstly, if you are uncertain about anything or you do not know something, always ask questions. Secondly, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala is capable of anything. There is nothing that is beyond the powers of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. And then finally, judgment and resurrection are indeed true. Both will happen at the end of time, at the end of the world. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed and benefited at the same time. And as always, follow for more amazing stories from the Quran. Assalamu alaikum.